All right, so you can notice, we've brushed her a lot right here. I've kind of fluffed up some of the areas where it was wet because even after brushing it, it was still a noticeably kind of spot of ick. But that's because it was wet, because it had that wet mud on it. We knocked the mud off, but it was still wet, so I've kind of fluffed it up so it can dry. But while it dries, I'm gonna utilize my time by cleaning out her feet. I wanna make sure I have a hoof pick. For mini donkeys, you'll need a smaller one than this one. This one's pretty intense. I usually use it for the horses or the standards, especially if their feet are really muddy, because I can kind of knock the mud out. So we're gonna clean underneath her feet, and then I'm gonna clean the outside of her hooves, because if they're shiny up top, but then they're caked in mud, that's not giving the best image. If you're out hiking on the trail, they might still get muddy. That's fine, but when we first go out, we want to look better, especially if we're at something like play day or a show. So I'm just going to start by picking her feet. Ask her to pick up. It's also important to pick the feet. You can check, do they need a trim anytime soon? You can see if they have an abscess going on, if they've got thrush going on, and most importantly, do they have a rock or a nail in there? We don't want a nail unless it's a horseshoe nail holding a shoe on, but the only way you're going to know is if you pick their feet. All right, so now I'm going to go through and I'm going to knock the mud off of her hooves and kind of the outside and make them a little tidier. A lot of hoof picks that you'll find in the store, they'll have the pick, and then back here they'll have this, same as this brush, kind of synthetic wiry bristles, and you can use that to brush the mud off and obviously brush inside the sole and frog area. Since mine doesn't, and honestly none of my hoof picks do, just because of my hoof pick preference, nothing wrong with those picks, I should have one. I'm going to use this brush. I do use that quite frequently for lower on their legs. So I'm going to start off and I'm just going to work my way down and brush off some of that mud that's on her feet. It's not as bad as it could be, but we can get cleaner than what she's at. And if you have to pick up the foot to clean it a little bit more, go ahead and pick up the foot. I've got a bunch of mud back here. I'm going to just work on brushing that off. If I use my washcloth too soon, I'm going to muddy my washcloth a little bit too much, so I'm just going to work on brushing off her feet, and even with just one done, it's going to look already better than the rest. So I'm going to go through, finish cleaning her feet. All right, so now, I've cleaned her face. This is almost dry, so I'm almost ready to go back to her body. I've brushed off a lot of the mud on her feet, but there's still kind of some dirt stuck on those hooves, and I just kind of want to put that finishing edge on there. So I'm going to take my wet rag and I'm going to just start to wipe off the mud on her hooves. I'm going to find it easier for myself if I pick up her foot and kind of clean it. So I'm going to ask her to pick up her foot. And I'm just going to take my washcloth. I'm just going to kind of wipe off the excessive mud. As best as I can. There might be some that kind of stays without washing it, but I can get most of this off. So I'm going to go ahead and do this on all 4 feet, and then by that time we might be able to come back and brush her out.